It seemed like a great idea at the time, but don't most failures start with brilliant decisions? Cindy's older sister, Chloe, asked us if we would like to chaperone her daughter's class trip to the exotic Caribbean island of Kokomo. All we had to pay for was airfare. My wife quickly accepted the offer. Chloe even offered to watch our two children, ages 9 and 7, while we were on the trip. Chloe's husband, Will, was an aspiring attorney busy with a big case. He just couldn't take time off for this trip. I've heard some horror stories about kids, especially girls, going on these trips to the islands. If I can't be there to look after Trish, then I want you and Dave to be there, Chloe said. Make no mistake, Cindy. I authorize you and Dave to take whatever steps you deem necessary to keep Trish out of danger. If you feel you have to set her ass up to keep her out of trouble or danger, then do it. I'd rather she come home with a bruised ego and ass than have her disappear or worse during this trip. Trish has never given us any trouble, Chloe. She's our goddaughter and we love her like family. Rest assured we'll take good care of her. I doubt very much that she will give us any trouble, Cindy replied. Cindy, we both remember our class trips, Chloe reminded her. We were lucky we didn't get into any real trouble. I heard you shared a bottle of bourbon with 2 other girls and the next day all 3 of you were sick. I got caught trying to climb out my bedroom window and we lived on the 3rd floor. I was lucky we had good chaperones. There will be 75 kids on this trip and 15 adults to look after them. You'll have your hands full. Dave will have his eyes busy with all those young women running down the beach in tight-fitting bathing suits, Cindy laughed. I'll be spending more time watching him than watching the kids. Thanks, sis. I appreciate you doing this for me and for Trish. She thinks she can do whatever she wants now that she's turned 18, so be careful, Chloe advised. She's still in our house, we're paying for her college, and she'll follow the rules. I thought exactly as Cindy advised. I was going to spend a week on a subtropical island with 75 kids fresh out of high school. I was sure at least 35 or so would be women, and most of them would look pretty good in little bikinis. Cindy could worry about discipline. I, on the other hand, was going to relax and enjoy myself. I would be babysitting, and female children at that. From the small airport, we took 2 decrepit buses to our hotel rooms, which were right on the beach. The entire flight, I tried to memorize the names of the children as well as the chaperones. I soon realized that I would never be able to remember them all, so I eliminated all the unimportant names. They were almost all men. That made it much easier, but I still had a hard time, so I excluded older women from the list of chaperones. Cindy and I were the youngest chaperones, with the exception of a couple of teachers. All of the parents were at least 30. Most were in their 40s and several were in their 50s. Miss Marie Beauvais and Mrs. Joan Davis were the 2 teachers whose names I remembered. The thought of them in their tiny bathing suits made me drool. If I had any knowledge of the female form, they would have filled out their costumes very well. It was still early, so everyone was itching to get changed and hit the beach. And that's where I got my first surprise. Cindy came out of our bathroom wearing the smallest bikini I had ever seen. Damn! Now I had to watch her and make sure all the teenage boys with raging hormones didn't get too frisky. And then there were the other male chaperones. How the hell was I supposed to escort my wife among the adults? Things suddenly got complicated. Cindy was a beautiful woman of 34 who could pass for a 20-something. The only obvious effect her 2 children had had on her was a one-size increase in her breasts. Now they were trying to fall out of her top. Do you like my suit, Dave? I knew you'd make a fool of yourself on this trip looking at all those pretty girls. I thought I'd try to do something to help take your mind off them. The only thing I could think of was to try to get you to stare at those girls, Cindy teased, wrapping her arms around her breasts. The first few days went pretty well. I couldn't stray far from Cindy when we were at the beach. If I stepped away to get a drink or a towel, when I returned, I would find that several of the older boys had found an excuse to chat with Cindy. They always had at least one of the male chaperones with them. I always tried to take it for granted and smiled as the crowd dispersed after my return. They always seemed to remember to be somewhere else when I appeared on stage. What's that smell? I asked Cindy, returning to her after an unusually large group of excited young men walked in. I don't smell of anything but the ocean, Dave, Cindy replied. I think it might be the testosterone that's hanging here like a cloud, Cindy, I told her with a straight face. Either that or the acne medication. I can't say for sure. Dave! Cindy laughed. These young men are always very polite, even if they seem to have bulges on their swim trunks all the time. I'm glad they don't wear those Speedo swim trunks that show everything. It's nice to be appreciated by young, virile men. What the hell am I? I asked in mock anger. Most people don't consider 38 years old to be over the top. I still have a bulge in my swimsuit. I noticed it when I saw you talking to that Dakota and her friend Grace, Cindy remarked. You need to be a little more careful, Dave. These girls want to have fun, and you look like the alpha male in this group. Don't lead them on and never be alone with one of them. You're here to protect them, and be sure you do. I blushed slightly at Cindy's remark. These two girls were stunning, and they seemed to enjoy being in my company. As I reflected on my fantasies with these girls, I thought of Chloe and the other parents expecting me to do everything I could to keep them out of trouble. I already had the sexiest woman on the island. I knew that. I had to make sure I kept my head out of my ass and assessed my position. It was okay to stare, but Cindy was my woman and remained my best fantasy. Some of the kids wanted to play tennis, and Cindy, who turned out to be an excellent player, and a few other chaperones went with them to the courts. It was explained to all the children that none of them were allowed to go anywhere alone. Half an hour later, Trish and her two friends, Dakota and Grace, came up to me. Uncle Dave, Dakota, Grace and I are going to walk a mile or two on the beach, Trish readily stated. We're following the rules and we'll check in with the chaperone before we head out. I don't know if that's a good idea, Trish. I feel responsible and I don't like the thought of you going so far away from me, I admitted. Then you should come with us, Dave, Dakota suggested. We couldn't be safer than having such a big, strong man by our side. You'll be able to keep us in sight at all times. Trish threw Dakota an annoyed look. That was enough for me to make up my mind. If Trish didn't want me to go with her, it was probably best if I went with her. Okay, girls, I agreed. Lead the way. We chatted about stuff as we walked. I realized I was having a good time. Having 3 beautiful 18-year-old girls with me contributed a lot to my satisfaction. We had walked almost 2 miles down the beach when I saw a sign near the dunes. As we approached it, I noticed that it was written in several languages. Fortunately, English was among them. Hold on, girls, I warned. This is a nudist beach. We'd better turn around and walk back. When I finished reading the sign and turned to face the girls, I discovered that Dakota was completely nude, and Grace was topless and pulling down her underpants. Both girls looked incredible. I had to admit it, I also had the sense to realize that I was being set up. They knew where they were going. It was obvious. Girls, please put on your costumes and we'll head back. You should have asked the female chaperone to come with you if that's what you had in mind, I complained weakly. Oh, Dave, do we really look that awful? Dakota laughed. Should we be ashamed to be naked on the beach? Do the other girls here look better? I looked ahead and saw a lot of naked women and men walking around, chatting and just sunbathing. What kind of mess had I gotten myself into? You girls look amazing and you know it, but this is wrong, said I. I can't go naked, and I can't watch you if you go to the beach. I want you to get dressed and we'll be right back. Watch our suits, if not our bodies, Dave. Grace grinned as the two of them walked off to the beach. I turned to face Trish. At least she had the sense to look embarrassed. Her face was red and she was still wearing the suit. I'm so sorry, Uncle Dave. I should have told you what we were planning. I couldn't believe it when they invited you to come with us. They must have known I would never get naked in front of my own uncle, Trish whined. I picked up the scraps of fabric the girls were wearing and took Trish's hand. Come with me, Trish. We'll just leave our clothes and follow her, I decided as I watched the two girls get smaller and smaller as they hurried down the beach. We hadn't gone 100 yards when we were stopped by a large man with an identification tag hanging around his neck, and nothing else. This is a nudist beach, sir, he pointed unnecessarily at me. I'm going to have to ask you to either remove your clothes or go back to the other side of the signs. I have to keep an eye out for a couple of girls who have gone naked on the beach and we're just trying to catch them, I pleaded. We'll leave the beach as soon as I catch up with them. Sir, they're not breaking the rules. You two, on the other hand, are. Please leave or take off your clothes. Right now, he insisted. This was it. My ass was in a very tight slit. If I leave Dakota and Grace and they get in any trouble, I will be held responsible. If I get naked and they see me, and they'll have to since I'm determined to catch them, I'll be in deep shit with Cindy, not to mention my parents and other chaperones. I thought it over quickly. It seemed that the trouble with Cindy and the others I could solve with a quick conversation. I couldn't let those two airheads get into trouble, though. Get out of the suit, Trish, I growled, unbuttoning my swim trunks and pulling them down. You've put me in a predicament. I can't leave you alone while I look for them, so get undressed. This will be our secret. Yeah, we'll keep that secret for about 10 seconds. I was under no illusions. Dakota and Grace would blab everything, even if Trish knew enough to keep her mouth shut. I tossed my costume and the girl's costume onto a nearby bench, hoping they'd still be there when we got back. I saw another garment lay on top of mine. Trish was naked as well. I turned to take her hand and start walking up the beach. She was shivering a little, but didn't complain as we hurried after the other two girls. By this time, they had rounded the curve of the beach and were out of sight. I was beyond furious. At least I wasn't having trouble getting an erection. Fear can kill any erotic thought, I realized as we followed Trish's two friends. I was with my wife's beautiful 18-year-old niece on a nude beach. Could there be a better formula for disaster? Things got even worse. We managed to get to the other end of the nude beach without finding the two girls. I tried not to look longingly at everyone we passed. I had enough problems as it was to have some other jealous husband or boyfriend take offense at my actions. Nevertheless, I managed to look closely enough to realize that we didn't pass Dakota and Grace. I lost my anger. I began to worry. Where were they? What if something had happened to them? How would I be able to explain it? There was no one acceptable explanation. As a parent, I understood that. I expected my children to be safe and out of trouble thanks to the chaperones. That was the sole purpose of having chaperones. The sun lowered in the sky and the beach began to empty. I turned around with Trish and walked back. Where are they, Uncle Dave? Trish asked. She didn't even seem to be thinking about the two of us being naked to the ground anymore. She was getting more and more worried about her friends. I don't know, Trish, I admitted. Let's walk closer to the dunes. We can watch the water's edge and look over the dunes at the same time. We had walked about a third of the way to where Dakota and Grace had left us when I heard voices coming from the other side of the small hill in the dunes. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was enough to alarm me. Stay here, Trish, I ordered. It looks like there might be trouble out there. I decided there was no point in dodging and walked down the dune toward the voices. Somehow I wasn't really surprised by what I found. Grace and Dakota were lying on several large beach towels. They were crying as the three men spread their legs and played with their breasts. Please, Dakota begged. Don't do this. We're virgins. You stupid bitches, grinned the man next to Grace. You've been drinking our beer and enjoying yourselves. Now it's time to pay the bill. Spread your legs now. You'll thank us later, the other thug laughed. Consider this an audition for the movie Goliath and the Anal Virgins. We're just gonna loosen you up a bit for Goliath. Believe me, you'll be glad we did it. All three men were focused on the girls and didn't notice my appearance. I rushed over to the first guy just as he knelt down between Grace's trembling legs. He rolled over on his ass as my left fist hit him in the temple. Now was not the time for discussion. The larger of the two remaining men lunged at me. I fended him off with my left. A right followed. He rolled over onto his back and remained standing with his toes pointed toward the sky. Then I felt a terrific blow to the back of my head and fell to my knees. While I was in a daze, the freak kicked me in the ribs and rolled me over onto my back. I started to get up, but he hit me in the right eye before I got to my feet. Now I was furious. We stood toe-to-toe and punched each other. I felt like we had been doing this for ages, but I knew from experience that these things only last a few seconds. Finally, I felt the bastard's jaw break, and he passed out before he hit the ground. I turned to the two girls who were still lying on their towels and sobbing hysterically. Get your asses up, I barked, bending over to grab Dakota's arm. I quickly forced her to stand up. Grace jumped to her feet at my command. I took each girl's hand and pushed them towards the beach. That's when I saw Trish looking at me with tears in her eyes. She ran and grabbed the 2 towels the girls were lying on and came back to me. "Uncle Dave," she screamed, "you're bleeding. Let me wipe the blood off your face." And I was too worried about the thugs sleeping in the dunes to stop. If they came after us, the element of surprise would no longer be on my side, and the end result would be very different. By this time, I had taken Dakota and Grace's hands in mine and was making my way at a brisk pace toward the bench where our clothes lay. After about 10 minutes of brisk walking, I began to feel dizzy. My head throbbed and my ribs hurt when I took deep breaths. I guided the girls toward the water. I let go of them and walked into the waves. Wading in waist deep, I lowered myself down and let the water wash over my sore face. It stung, but it felt good at the same time. After dipping a few times, I got out of the water. As soon as I got out on dry land, Trish started petting me. She handed me a towel, and with the other, she wiped me off. I sighed as she stroked my left side. As you'd expect, she pressed on the very ribs that had taken quite a beating. "Sorry, Uncle Dave," Trish apologized, continuing to wipe my back and shoulders. "I remember when that brute kicked you. I should have known it was going to hurt." Dakota and Grace had stopped sobbing, but hadn't spoken yet. They must have been thinking about how close they had come to rape, and possibly something worse. I was surprised to find our suits still lying on the bench where Trish and I had thrown them. We all dressed in silence and headed back to the hotel as the sun seemed to sink into the sea. "Girls, go change and join the group for dinner," I ordered. "They will ask where you and where I have been. Just tell them we went for a walk on the beach and lost track of time. No one needs to know what really happened. Your reputation is at stake. Stick to your story." I figured it would be better for the girls if no one knew they were at a nude beach, drinking beer and almost getting raped. It would also be much better for me if the incident went unnoticed. I managed to get back to my room without attracting too much attention. I kept the towel on my head and just peeked out from underneath it. I spent 20 minutes under the very hot running water in the shower. Then I collapsed on the bed. I carefully pulled the sheet over my head, turned to face the wall, and lay on my stomach. I didn't want Cindy to see my face. I had been asleep for probably half an hour when Cindy walked into the room. "Where the hell have you been, Dave?" she demanded immediately. "You just up and disappeared with 3 girls for almost 4 hours? I warned you about this. Trish and her friends didn't tell me anything except that you took a long walk and lost track of time." She pulled the sheet off my head and shoulders, but I remained still, facing the wall. "Look at me when I'm talking to you," she insisted. "Are you ashamed to look me in the eye?" "Cindy, I made an error in judgment. I admit it, but I didn't do anything with those girls that you should be upset about," I stated into my pillow. "Just leave me alone and let me sleep. We'll talk about it in the morning." I heard Cindy curse and slam the door shut. I dozed off. When I woke up around midnight, I found I was alone in my bed. I got up and went to the bathroom. I hoped that I would receive healing in the morning. That dream was dispelled when I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I had a cut above my left eye, and it was severely discolored. My nose was swollen, and there was a bruise on my chest. I rummaged through the small first aid kit in the closet, but found nothing that would help. Then I heard the door open, and muffled voices came through the bathroom door. There was a sharp knock, and then the bathroom door opened. "Oh, Dave," Cindy exclaimed, looking at my sorry face. "Why didn't you tell me? Get on the bed and let me take care of you, baby." I was already in quite a bit of pain, so I let Cindy take me to the bed. That's when I noticed that Trish was in the room. I looked around for something to cover my nakedness. "This is no time for modesty, Dave," Cindy whispered in my ear, holding a wet rag to my head. "Trish, go get the painkillers they have in the lobby. Tell them to bill our room." "They seem to think you're their knight in shining armor," Cindy said as Trish left the room. "Looks like there are chinks in that armor, Dave. Why didn't you tell me what happened when I came in earlier and made a fool of myself?" "I screwed up, Cindy. I let those girls play me like a fiddle. I thought I'd look better by morning and no one would know anything," I mumbled through a thick lip. "Better by morning? Hell, Dave, I'm tempted to take you to the hospital, but I don't have much faith in the voodoo practiced on this island. You'll look like hell for another week or two after you get home, Cindy predicted, much to my dismay. The next day, I lay on the beach, letting the sun soak into my aching joints and flesh. I knew everyone was talking about my appearance, but no one was asking me for details. It was obvious that my plan to keep it all quiet wasn't going to work. Today at breakfast, Dakota and Grace told everyone what happened yesterday, Cindy reported as she rubbed lotion into my skin. Some of the boys were talking about how you probably got your ass kicked by someone. The girls decided they needed to tell the truth. Trish said you could hear a pin drop as they told their story about how you went over the dune and straightened out 3 very bad men. Now you're almost in the same class as Chuck Norris, Cindy laughed. And here I was wondering why you didn't have an entourage of hormonal teenagers following you around today. Maybe they're afraid of my circle jerk, suggested I with a pained smile. I went to bed early that night and slept for 24 hours. My ribs hurt even worse than the day before, but my face had lost the bright colors of the previous day and was now mostly a sickly yellow around my eyes. I was feeling much better. This day was our last full day on the island. The chaperones agreed to split into 2 groups and accompany the kids to the only 2 clubs on the island on their last night. The legal drinking age was 18 years old. We spent about half an hour explaining to the kids that those under 18 should not consume alcohol. Those over 18 were threatened with all possible punishments if they drank more than a few drinks in an evening. No one was to leave the club without permission or an escort. Cindy and I were with a group that included Trish, Dakota, and Grace. They were having a good time, but seemed to be following the rules set for them. It was about 10 o'clock at night when things went downhill. Mrs. Reynolds, the vice principal of the school and in charge of the trip, tracked me down as I sat at a small table with Cindy and a few other chaperones. "David!" she exclaimed as I stood up to greet her. "We can't find Kathy Mills. She was dancing at another club, having a good time with her friends. They said she hadn't been drinking much, but she started to stagger out. Then some guy suggested she go outside for some air, but she never came back. By the time the girls told me about it, she was nowhere to be found. I'm at a loss, David. What should we do?" Normally, the answer would have been to call the police. But the problem was that the people at our hotel strongly advised against relying on the island's police force for any assistance. It is steeped in corruption and bribery. "Has anyone seen what this guy looks like?" I asked quickly. Mrs. Reynolds nudged the girl toward me as I asked my question. With her glasses and small face, she looked like a deer mouse. "I saw a man. He was quite large. He had dark hair and a heavy tan. He also had a big lump on his forehead. It was yellowish and painful looking," she concluded. I took off the dark glasses I was wearing and pulled the girl closer to me. "Was she yellow like my eye?" I asked, and followed her nodding. Damn, this could very well be one of those assholes I'd messed with a couple days ago. If that was the case, the Mills girl was in some serious shit. "Cindy, I think you've had too much to drink tonight," I told her. "You're going to go to that club and act more than drunk, and quite approachable at that. Let's hope those creeps are still looking for a second woman." I remembered the guy's words about Goliath and virgins. He had said virgins in the plural. That meant that their movie or webcast or whatever it was required more than one girl. "Dave, don't you think I'm a little old for their tastes? Or do you think any warm body will do?" Cindy asked. I looked at my wife in her little black dress and realized that no man could resist her beauty. I just had to make sure I kept her safe. "Cindy, if a man is breathing, he will want that luscious body and beautiful face," I assured her. 20 minutes later, I was sitting at the Coconut Grove bar watching Cindy dancing and having fun with the guys from Trish's school. To a casual observer, it might have appeared that Cindy was suffering the effects of too much rum. And then I saw him. It was the same guy I'd punched in the temple. I pulled my baseball cap over my face, put my dark glasses on my nose, and watched. It was too crowded to see Cindy every second, but I tried my best. Sure enough, a knotted man started dancing with Cindy. The crowd made it hard for me to see her. After about 5 minutes, I saw Cindy throw her head back and drain her drink. I warned her not to take any drinks. It seemed that these guys could slip something into their victims' drinks. A few minutes later, Cindy was half out and half out the side door. I ran out of the house, and as I went around the side of it, I saw the guy loading Cindy into the back seat of the car. He climbed into the back with her, and the car drove off. I jumped on the motorcycle I had parked behind the club and rushed after them. As I pulled onto the road a few hundred yards behind the car, I turned off my headlights. I followed it inland for about a mile and saw it parked outside a small abandoned warehouse. I crept around to the back and peered through the dirty window pane. Cindy and Kathy Mills were sprawled out on a large bed. Both were naked except for their underwear. Cindy was wearing a black thong and the Mills girl was wearing small pink bikini panties. Cindy seemed a little self-conscious, always wearing one-piece bathing suits, but it was obvious that she had enough of a figure to wear whatever she wanted. Both girls seemed dead to the world. There were bright lamps hanging over the bed and several cameras on stands around it. I saw the second man I had knocked out on the beach that day explaining something to a very large man. By large, I mean about 7 feet tall and weighing over 300 pounds. I looked around for some sort of weapon, knowing that I would definitely need one. There was no way he was using my wife or Kathy Mills for some kinky movie. If the guy was out of proportion, no woman could have sex with him and would never be the same. I had to act fast. I found an old, broken paddle against the wall. It was part of a handle without a flat end and over 5 feet long. I took it in my right hand and cautiously began to circle the building. In the light of the nearly full moon, I saw a man standing near a car. A bandage was visible on his jaw. It made me grin to myself. He'd get sick of me soon enough. As I approached him from behind, I heard the unmistakable sounds of urination. He still didn't know what had gotten into him. Maybe I was being a little harsh, but I figured it was best to be reassured. These guys were rapists and kidnappers, after all. I quietly entered the building. The bright lights above the bed made everything else very dark. I had no trouble getting close to the two men conversing near the bed. They were discussing which girl's ass the big guy should grab first. This increased my desire to possess them both. I tried to take them both in one blow. I swung the baton in a long, fast arc. It smashed one of the lanterns, then bounced off the smaller man's head and continued on to hit the giant in the shoulder. The first guy went down. The big guy didn't. He grabbed his lower shoulder and turned toward me. That blow would have broken the arm of most men. He who hesitates has lost. I proceeded to imitate Ringo Starr on the big guy's head. I gave him a dozen blows before he could even take a step. When he slowly sank to the floor, I gave him a good smack on the ear. That seemed to do the trick. I turned around to see if anyone else needed my attention. Just then, I felt something smack into my already injured ribs. I fell flat on my back like piss on a chalkboard. I shook my head and looked around. Standing over me was the third guy from that encounter in the dunes with a gun. He pointed it at my head, and I closed my eyes. I heard a sharp crack but felt no new jolts in my body. When I looked up, I saw Cindy holding my broken paddle and the man with the gun stretched out at my feet. She must have been playing possum after all. "Dave!" Cindy yelled. "He shot you! How badly are you hurt? You have blood all over your chest!" It occurred to me that I felt pretty good for someone who had just been shot. I felt my side and found a bloody gash along my ribs, but no real hole. The miserable freak was a lousy shot. "I'm fine, Cindy, but we have to go," I insisted. The lantern I'd broken made a small fire in a pile of cardboard boxes and trash near the bed. As dry as the building was, it was going to be hell in a few minutes. I grabbed my digital camera, snapped a picture of the three men strewn across the floor, and handed it to Cindy. Then I grabbed Katie and threw her over my shoulder. She was already coming out of her comatose state, but she was still dazed and disoriented. We hurried out of the building. I placed Katie on the ground to roll my first victim over and take a picture of her. Then I pulled the chip out of the camera and slipped it into my pocket. I threw the camera back into the burning building. It occurred to me that the people inside might die in the fire, but the thought didn't cause me much concern. They were taking a risk when they decided to hunt women. Let them burn in hell for all I care. I ripped open the rest of my shirt and wiped the blood from my side. It stung like hell, and I could feel the blood running down my side and into my pants. I discarded the rag that was my shirt, slung Katie Mills back over my right shoulder, and headed back the way I'd come, holding Cindy under my arm. We hadn't gone a quarter mile before I was tired. Kathy was fidgeting and making noises, so I set her on her feet, supporting her with my arm behind her back. At that moment, we heard a noise. It was obvious that there was a crowd moving down the road. I cursed myself for not bringing my trusty club. Suddenly, the boys from the school materialized out of the shadows of the palm trees in the moonlight. They stopped about 10 meters in front of us, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. "Wow, amazing breasts!" was the exclamation I clearly heard. Cindy and Kathy must have heard it too. They stepped closer and leaned toward me. I instinctively wrapped my arms around them. There was a bright flash, and I realized that one of the kids had a camera with him. Then everyone started talking at once. Several of the boys offered their shirts to Cindy and Katie. We started walking back to the hotel. We saw a fire in the distance, and the kids demanded that we hurry over there to see if we could help you, Dave, Mrs. Reynolds told us. None of us doubted that you were somehow involved in the fire. We were sure you would find Kathy and Cindy, and you proved that our faith was well-founded. Dave was hurt, Cindy explained. He said it wasn't too bad, but he's bleeding a lot. We need to take him back to the hotel and get the wound looked at. That got the kids excited. Trish, Dakota, and Grace ran up to offer to help me. Quiet Katie surprised us all when she spoke, lifting my arm back over her shoulder. "Stand back, girls," she warned. "Cindy and I are going to help Dave back. You're not the only ones that guy saved his life." No one slept that night. The kids were too drunk to even think about it. We were just packing and getting ready for the buses to come get us. We made our flight on time. My wound on my side was swollen and looked ugly. Cindy found some antibiotic cream and put it on the wound and bandaged me up. I slept most of the flight home. Buses from the school picked us up at the airport and took us back to the school where parents were to pick up their children. Mrs. Reynolds refused to let the children go until they all entered the assembly hall with their parents and chaperones. Everyone groaned, but she refused to relent. She took the stage and gave a short, impromptu speech. "I want to thank everyone for their patience. Many of you have already heard about what happened on our trip. I can honestly say that we wouldn't have gotten back with all the kids if it wasn't for Dave and Cindy Bates. They risked their lives and suffered no small amount to make sure all of our children came back alive and well," she told the crowd. "Dave Bates's first stop after this meeting will be the county hospital. He appears to have broken ribs, severe bruising on his face, and of course there is the matter of a gunshot wound. All of this is the price he paid for protecting our students, and I thank him from the bottom of my heart for all of us." Applause and all sorts of questions broke out, but Mrs. Reynolds managed to quiet the crowd. "There is one more thing. This school will never again send its students to any island. From now on, it will be Disneyland, New York, or Chicago, but always within this country," she proclaimed. I spent a couple hours in the hospital. I was given a few shots, had my wound cleaned, and a bandage put back on. When Cindy and I returned to the waiting room, Dakota, Grace, Katie, and Trish and their parents were waiting for us. I was a little embarrassed by the praise and gratitude expressed by my parents. Cindy's sister, Chloe, gave me a long hug, and I could feel her tears running down my cheek. She struggled to speak out. "Dave, I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I asked you and Cindy to chaperone, but I'm so glad I did. I doubt anyone else could have handled everything as well as you did." Trish told me how you dragged her naked around a nude beach, stopped to rescue a couple of girls, and yet remained an impeccable gentleman. "Sis has found a keeper in you." Dakota hugged me tightly and kissed my cheek. Grace did the same. Trish hugged me tightly. Katie, the quiet, shy valedictorian of the class, threw her arms around my neck and kissed me on the lips, and the others burst into laughter. "You saved me, Dave. I'll never forget that. If Cindy ever stops treating you normally, come find me, okay?" she whispered. I thought things would be back to normal in a few days, but that wasn't the case. One of the cable news channels sent Greta. On another, some woman named Nancy showed up to interview everyone. I wanted to decline, but Cindy, Trish, Dakota, Grace, and Kathy insisted I show up too. We went on television to answer questions and tell our stories. I thought both appearances went very well. I learned that no bodies were found at the scene of the fire. I think the bad guys walked away, probably with severe headaches. One of the computer guys on the trip posted pictures all over the internet of the 4 guys I took, along with some pretty devastating descriptions of their actions. They even have their own web page. 2 of them have already been caught. The Kokomo government has promised to clean up the corruption on the island and make it safer for tourists. We'll see how that goes. The most interesting thing happened to Katie, a shy senior. You'd think she was traumatized by being kidnapped and almost raped. Turns out that the picture the guy took of her, Cindy, and me after we escaped turned out to be very successful. People magazine put her on the cover of their next issue with the headline, "Commotion in Kokomo." You had to see it to appreciate how incredible the photo was. In it, I was standing shirtless, with a discolored eye and blood running down my left side. Beneath my left arm was Cindy. Her breasts were pressed against me just enough to cover her chest and show the swelling of her breasts on the side. Her left hand lay just below my waist with her palms spread apart. My hand lay on her bare ass. Some of my blood was smeared across her breasts, and it looked erotic as hell. Cindy's face looked incredibly beautiful. Her tongue lightly touched her lips. Beneath my right arm lay Katie. Her amazingly full breasts were pressed against my right side. Her hand rested on my upper chest. Her hair was loose throughout, almost like a lion's mane. Her face had a tantalizing, inscrutable look. This was the valedictorian of the class. Katie teamed up with the boy who took the picture, and they made a poster together. It sold quite well, too. She insisted that Cindy and I get a cut of the sales, although Kathy traveled all over the country signing posters to delighted fans, mostly teenage boys. She even went on all the talk shows. I hear she's been signed to appear in a movie next spring. Speaking of movies, there are talks of making a TV movie about our island adventure. Hopefully Brad Pitt will play me and the movie will be shown on HBO instead of Lifetime.